Hello, I am Ryan J. Cheshire, and I wrote and performed Six Epic Adventures, the Tardis Logs, the Fish Tank of Death. I think I should probably give some context to the Fish Tank of Death and how this all sort of began, because this story changed a fair bit during its creation. For example, originally when me and Matthew were doing Six Epic Adventures back in 2014 and 2015, he originally I wanted him to do the full first series, and he said he would only do cameos and short appearances. And then eventually he just wanted out in the very next episode, so that never came to be. Years later, in Wing Wang Six Form back, and it was back in 2017, might have been late 2016, during our final year of Sixth Form, I had this idea for an adventure to do with him, and I wanted him to return in audio form, since I was starting to do Six Second Adventures audio dramas, and he just told me no, he didn't want to do that, and I said, all right then. I did have this really good idea, at least at the time I thought was a good idea. Whether it was or not was debatable. But I did ask, could I do an audio book with your character in it? And he did agree to that, so that's how that came about. And I started then creating the first part of the Fish Tank of Death way back in 2017, where I did and recorded part one of it. And I initially released part one, which I did complete back in 2017. I released that on my website. I no longer release them early on my website. I used to release them on my website early, just to give testings, because actually back in the day, my audio dramas, actually people in my IT class would actually listen to them. Particularly my Five Nights at Freddy's audio dramas, the three that I did of those, people actually did like them and listen to them, which is really weird because, so that's why I decided to do that. But the reason I called it the TARDIS Logs is because I wanted it to be in a similar sort of vein of not quite an audiobook, sort of similar to basically I took the idea from the Big Finish Companion Chronicles, where a companion retells a story. In this case, it's my own character Six is retelling a story, and I decided to just call it the TARDIS Logs, as it also reminded me of Human Nature and Family of Blood, of the 10th Doctor leaving messages to Martha. So that's why the TARDIS Logs, sort of subtitle for the series, and that came about. And you might notice for this, the audio quality for this audio drama, in terms of recording and that, might not be as sharp or as crisp as other ones I did. Like, for example, last year for Christmas, I did the Blood of the Teletubbies and others. And the reason is because it was recorded on my phone. It was recorded on my phone, and the reason is that at the time, that was the best audio quality that I had to record on. That was, at the time, the best I had to record the audio on. And because of this, initially I had recorded parts 1 through 3 initially, and then had to stop for a bit because basically at the time I was then job searching and going on various work courses, which, along with various other things that interrupted that. So parts 1 through 3 kind of got interrupted because initially I saw the story as a 4-parter, and initially the story was simply going to end as it appears to end in part 4, supposedly, with the Sycorax being the singular Sycorax being defeated in Matthew's garden by the homemade explosive. obviously inspired by Ace, and that was how it initially was. However, looking back, I thought it doesn't really that doesn't really raise the stakes very high in the story, but also it just kind of seems a bit too simple in its execution. I wanted to build on it more and give the Sycorax a bit more of a reason for doing something, because I realised that, well, why is the Sycorax doing this? And in the initial version of the story, there wasn't really a reason why the Sycorax was doing any of this. So that's why I decided to expand it to initially a 7-part story. And then I kind of realised when I was recording part 5 is, holy shit, this thing is getting far too long again. It's having sort of the opposite problem where I'm adding far too much to it, and it's kind of just suddenly going on at a snail's rate, which is why parts 6 and 7 were sort of compressed down into one, so then it became a 6-parter. And it is the first 6-part, 6-second adventures story I've ever done. It's the longest, also 6-second adventures story that I've ever done as well. Because each and every part is over 10 minutes, which is because the average 6-sec adventures visual episode would be, 10 minutes long, and the audios tend to be ever so slightly longer. So I decided to compress them together. Basically, the stuff that was cut is essentially there was going to be an entire chase round the abandoned mine shafts, and the Sycorax was there was going to be a trap set for the Sycorax where we escaped it for a bit, and we set a trap for it, and it just kind of felt like it was kind of just stretching things out, and the plot kind of was just meandering while the characters in it were just having a bit of a runabout. So that is why bits like that were just basically just cut down to the shortest, quickest chase ever. And so we could get, because episode 7 was just going to be completely on the Sycorax ship. That was going to be the entirety of the episode. And the part 6 cliffhanger was originally going to be the explosive had actually been lit and was about to go off, and that's where the cliffhanger was about to be there. So they kind of merged into one. I think if I was to redo the story, I'd redo it as a 4-parter and have it a lot more condensed. The problem is that I'd already done, well, at the time I thought I'd done 3/4 of the story. It turned out I'd only done half of it, and that half was left for over a year. And the only reason that now it's obviously come back is due to the COVID-19 lockdown. I basically decided to look back on my unreleased, if there was any unreleased content that I could actually release during this period. And looking back, I remembered, oh yeah, the Fish Tank of Death. I never actually finished that. And looking back on it, actually, the Fish Tank of Death makes less and less sense, because the fish tank portion of it became smaller and smaller as the story got longer and longer. If it was still just a 4-parter, then maybe it would make a lot more sense. But I think also it just kind of has that kind of it's kind of a Doctor Who-y sort of almost spoof title. It's just something of death. It has an of the in the title. It has an of and the in the title. So it makes sense as a Doctor Who sort of inspired title. Yeah, that, to be honest, some of my titles, I try and make the titles a little bit misleading or a bit contrasty. For example, like Blood of the Teletubbies. You know, you got Teletubbies, which is, you know, meant for babies and toddlers, and then you've got, blood. And this, you got a fish tank, which, yeah, it's just like, and it's death. So it's kind of the way they mix. The Sycorax, um, the name of the monks, to be honest, the monster itself, I think is a bit too basic, to be honest, and I should have gave it more descriptions, and also to match up, because the thing is, part between the recording of part one, uh, parts 1 to 3, and now, basically, there's nearly a 3-year gap between the two of them. But in order to keep that match between the two, I make sure to make my voice sound a little bit higher pitched than it normally is, to make myself sound a bit younger. Just by vocally doing it, not in editing. And also to make sure that I did actually record it on my phone, just like I did with parts 1 through 3, in order so everything sort of matches up and there isn't isn't a massive contrasting difference between the two, so it all just nicely flows. And I think, as you know, a test run to see how the Tardis logs do. Yeah, and to be honest, in some ways I do prefer it. It's a lot, I think, in the way it does give me the chance to expand things a bit more. Because the 6 Sec audio series with Rob, that was always written as essentially, they were always written as the sense of, you know, this is so in the same sort of way that the visual ones were done on video. So they were a lot faster paced, a lot quicker. They were longer stories because audio allowed that. But this one really, since it was, you know, sort of half and half between an audio drama and an audio book, it gave me the ability to expand things a lot more with the story and the ideas that I could have done with it. And it also is going to, you know, if I do decide to continue with this, there are other stories that I can do in this format that won't really work in the other two, mainly because in one, in a video visual format, I don't have the budget or you know, a full cast, and in the, you know, audio drama format, I don't have a full cast. So here it means I'm able to do it on my own and just record it all and do it all by myself, since I don't have any other cast members to do, which means, you know, if it also meant that if all the voices, you know, were me, they were going to sound similar to my own voice. But since it was me, you know, my character telling the story, then that mattered less. So that was a good way to get around that. And also to give some descriptions of the environment and the way that things are set. So, yeah, overall, I was happy doing this. And I hope to do more in the future.